Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar. So excited for this conversation. It's so important for all of us. Deep Six, your firm's hidden security risks. And I'm honored today to be joined by Wes Stillman, who probably is the smartest person I know when it comes to security and many other things. And so we'll get into introducing Wes in a minute. We'll do a couple little pieces of housekeeping because I'm sure some of you have never done CPE before. I'm just kidding. Okay, so you're going to be able to see here, just to get started, you'll see something that looks like this. You'll see in the thing here, it says questions on your own computer. If you're listening, that's fine, but if you want to join and ask questions as Wes and I are going through, please feel free to do that. That's, we're here to answer your questions. We want to give you the information that you are looking for. Just as a heads up, you can view presentations in full screen mode, and just so you know, you can do that as well. Make sure for CPE that you are paying attention for when we do launch polling questions for you. That's your opportunity to show that you're listening and participating so that you can earn that 1 hour of CPE. And we will make sure we call it out. We typically talk through them, but just be paying attention to that, because without that, we're going to have issues. This webinar is being recorded, so that's good. So if something happens, at the end of the day, or if you want to be able to share it with colleagues or any of your staff, you can certainly do that as well. And just, again, feel free to interact in any way you can. Throw your location out in the question area. We can find out where some of you are from, just so we can say hello. But we aren't going to take too much time doing that type of thing. But I think you guys should be all set to make sure that you're getting your CPE. So we'll move on to say hello. My name is Dawn Brolin. I'm a certified public accountant and a certified fraud examiner. I'm a CEO of Powerful Accounting, and I wrote a book called The Designated Motivator for Accounting Professionals, because my big passion is to help every single one of us in this industry move our businesses forward. Okay, and so that's going to kind of be our goal as we go through here. So with that, just giving you a heads up, I'm passionate about helping you. Feel free to join the motivation movement at dawnbrolin.com, where I have a lot of free resources that you're welcome to enjoy. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce my very good friend and new friend, I would say, over the last year, who wowed me at Scaling New Heights 2021, Wes Stillman. Say hello, Wes.
Hey, everybody. Dawn, thanks so much for those kind words. I hope I can live up to just part of that intro. Thank you very much. I really enjoy working with you. Thank you for the opportunity today.
Yeah, Wes and I are going to hopefully teach you a lot of things as we go through today, all about security and the things that we need to be thinking about. And as a matter of fact, we are required to think about as practitioners, which is super important. And so today's agenda, what are we going to talk about? How is Swissnet paying attention and changing the game? But most importantly, we want to just get you information that I'm hoping you open up your coconuts. That's the way I say it. Open up your coconuts to what we can offer you, what Swissnet can offer you in helping you protect your practice. Because at the end of the day, it only takes one breach, one issue to end the game. So we're going to talk about offering next generation antivirus protection and what that means. And I feel like as a practitioner, this stuff changes every day. So very excited to hear, especially from Wes, a lot of the deep valued information about protecting ourselves. Certainly not waiting for an attack to happen. We want to identify and address threats before they happen. A lot of times we end up being reactive as opposed to proactive, and we're hoping with the information you learned today that you can take it back to your practice and implement and be proactive to protect yourself in your practice. And of course, implementing cybersecurity, and what the heck does that even mean, and why is it important? And so that's what we're going to go through today. Really excited to make this happen. All right.
Don, so, if you don't mind, I'd like to just add real quick, while Swissnet Advisory has a big bench and a lot of capabilities and technology for you, I want to make this educational too. It's not just some sales pitch out there. So please, questions, stop me, let me help you understand and learn about the different technologies that are available today.
Absolutely, Wes, great addition, 100% agree with you. And so as we're thinking about it, surface level security isn't enough. It used to be enough, let's even look at 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, where it was more, we were still understanding, everybody downloaded Norton. We were like, okay, if you have Norton, you're secure, everything's good, move on with your day. But it's not enough to meet the IRS 4557 security 6 requirements. There are 6 requirements, and Wes and I are going to go through those 6 requirements. And so we know that it's just not enough. What we've been doing isn't enough. And the definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. Well, I can tell you what, in this case, you will get different results. You keep doing the same thing over and over again, you're going to find you're going to have different results, and that's not great. Okay, going deeper into device level and data-driven security practices. This is something that until I would say the last 5 years, I remember those of you who have been to Scaling New Heights and have been around Scaling New Heights know Murph. So Murph is a guy who has dug deep into security, has been trying for years to educate us. And I remember him having a session at Scaling New Heights on security, and it was like the room was packed. I mean, this was a packed room because we were just actually starting to pay attention and realize we needed to pay attention. I don't know how much we really did with the information because most of it I didn't understand, but it really brought to light what I feel like for me the first time that I was introduced to this whole conversation. So now we know it's not just that surface level security. We are now having to go device level and data-driven security practices that are required, which is, and I'll get to you, Wes, in a hot second in a minute here, but most important, this is something that people are just like, I think we check boxes sometimes and we don't understand the implications of the boxes we're checking when we get a P10 or when we sign up for our data security insurance plan, our cybersecurity plan, and we say, yes, I have a written information security plan, when you don't. And we're supposed to be ethical practitioners. So what are we doing? What is wrong with us? So with that, Wes, I'm going to let you interject here because I can see you chomping. You're ready to say something. So you go for it.
A couple of key things there. Cybersecurity insurance for folks that are looking at it or have already done it. What Don just said a minute ago is really important, that those things are answered to your best capability and understanding of what you have. Else you may find yourself, paying for cybersecurity that really isn't going to do you any good. Secondly, that written security policy, I'll just mention, most of us know by now that the IRS site, irs.gov, has that nice checklist and template for a written information security policy. But if you read the publication, it's saying no more templates. It has to be customized for your business. So just want to make sure everyone grasps that. It's not good enough to just have a template that's written out there.
Yes, and that's, as I've been going, and I'm on the journey. I'm deep into the journey now. I started the journey really deep about 4 months ago, and working with Swissnet to start to dot the I's and cross the T's. I think that's the best way to describe it, that we thought we had certain things in place, and then once we started to uncover and actually go through the process, I was like, oh no. I didn't realize how exposed I was. And what I love about, what Swissnet does for me, and again, this isn't a sales pitch, but I just want you to understand that there are companies out there that can protect you. And with Swissnet offering all the back office protection, implementation resources, the training, and 24/7 security, it gives me that peace of mind when I travel, especially. That's a really great time when I'm like, all right, I'm at the airport, or I bust out my MacBook and I join the airport network, and is this safe? Should I be doing it? Historically, I would just be like, whatever, I just need to get my work done. And now I'm like, okay, I travel with peace of mind. And so if you're not traveling with that peace of mind, or actually if you're not even thinking about it, which is where I was historically, if you're in that space, I need to wake you up a little bit and shake you up to say this is not okay, and then take the steps to start figuring out how you can protect yourself. Super important. So we're going to go ahead and launch our first polling question, which is fun. So first polling question, where are you in your cybersecurity evolution and implementation journey? So either you've started the process of developing, I don't believe this applies to me or my firm, please don't answer B. C is I have no idea where to start, totally understandable. And D, I know I need help, this is overwhelming. And that's kind of where I was, is like, I know I need to do something. I don't know what to do. And so thankfully for me, I was open-minded, which I think is another key component is, do you even believe this is a problem? So this is polling question 1, everybody. So make sure you're answering the polling question. I just like to talk through them because it makes sense. So thinking about if this is overwhelming, when I listened to Wes back in 2021 at Scaling New Heights, I was ready to hear the message. And I know sometimes we may not be ready to hear the message, but I was there. And so Wes, like, talk a little bit about the journeys that you've seen people go through, good and bad.
Well, I want to mention first, I remember up on stage seeing Don in that first role, just writing frantically about what we were talking about. So when she says, you know, I was ready for it, that's a really good example of that. I think most of the journey for most people, they get started, and the bottom line is you begin to learn what you don't know. Right? And the more you learn, the more you realize there is a lot to this. But I would also caution, don't go overboard in terms of risk assessment, and understand that it's risk to your business, right? What is a real risk to your business? So I see people really kind of forgetting to see the forest because they got all these trees in front of them, right? So just remember, you're doing this for your business. What makes sense? Are you a one-person firm or a 100-person firm? There is a difference in terms of what kind of policies and controls you really need to have in place.
I love that. That's a great point.
Yeah, there's basic things for everybody, but we should realize, and that's the whole purpose of really trying to do the risk assessment and analyze where you are in your business, know what your risks really are.
Absolutely, totally true. So hidden risk, where the heck are they? That's what we want to talk about, Wes. Where the heck are these risks? And really, at the end of the day, the risks have changed over time. Historically, it's, you know, employees go to the office, they've got the office computer, you've got an IT specialist, and I'm not saying that isn't still present, but it's become less I guess high of a priority for people to have people in their office. So many people are working from home now. But here's a big issue is bring your own device for employees. Right? So let's think about for a hot second, let's stay with our firms, right? We're really talking about our firms because we could talk all day about the clients. We know they're at risk as well, but it's almost like put your mask on first before you put it on the person next to you. The reason I say that is because I got to put mine on, because if I don't put mine on, my husband puts his on, he may not put mine on. So I have to be prepared at all times. But that's what we're here for, right, Wes? We're here to protect ourselves, right? And at the end of the day, bring your own device has always been a risk, but now with allowing people to work from home, think about your own staff. If you have remote staff, are you sending them a laptop that's already been, you know, all the installation of all the protection, the device protection, has that happened, or are you just sending it from Amazon and shipping it right to them, right? So you must see some of that.
Yeah, we see it all the time. And really, I want everyone to kind of understand, the model still is we have some hosted applications, QuickBooks Desktop, good example, compared to QuickBooks Online, for example. QuickBooks Online is software as a service. It's something you buy. You don't have to load it on your computer. And so the more we move into that space for those types of applications, it's really easy. It's a website, right? We go to it. They have all the security and capabilities locked in on their side.
Absolutely.
What they cannot do is protect access to that secure environment. That's your job. That's the end device. And so if you're not managing access in some way. And the best way to do that is to manage those end devices, secure those end devices. But if you're not doing that and you're using that home computer, at that point, you are opening up the front door to all of your applications and all of your clients' data. So it's really important that that initial point of access is also managed and controlled. Does that make sense, Don?
It makes sense, and something just popped in my head. Like, that's what's so fun about having these webinars where we have conversations. This is not scripted in any way. We are just going for it. One of the things I remember doing a while back, I remember having a server at this one firm that I was at, had a server, and we had an external drive, or actually it was tapes. You put the tape into the server, and somebody, before the last person to leave the office, would back up the tape and take the tape with them, right? Because we were like, oh, safety first type of thing. And that was our mindset. And I mean, that's so archaic now, but I know people still do it. But it's like, but the server's still there, like that server box, right?
I got a funny story for you, Don, about that. I had a client who did that for over 2 years. Swapped them out every day, moved it, took it home, and all of a sudden we needed a backup, right? They go to put it in. Guess what's blank?
The tape.
Every single tape that they had been swapping in and out for the better part of 2 years, they had never done anything on it. The job never ran. And they never checked it. They never looked at it. They never considered that it might not be working.
Wow.
So times have changed, obviously, right? And most of us don't have servers anymore. But the point is, you still have to make sure you've got that end device secured and you know why and how it's working, right?
100%.
You can validate that.
So funny how we've changed, right? And how things have grown, and have we changed with the times is a whole nother thing. But obviously we're talking about unsecured Wi-Fi, which you touched on when it comes to at home people. Is it all set, right? Phishing scams are obviously on the rise. They're always been on the rise. We need to be alert. We need to be paying attention to that. And missing or unenforced written information security policies, which technically you can have a written information policy, a security policy. That's great. Great that you have a written. So number one, if we were to survey, do you have a WISP? Do you have a written information security policy? Do you have one? Well, let's take it a step further from that and say, well, great, you have a written, but are you testing? Are you following that policy? And are you actually implementing what you're saying you're implementing in the policy? Which, to your point, Wes, is which is why. Even if you have an insurance policy, you haven't shown and proven you've been testing, you haven't shown and proven you can do all this, they're going to say you're on your own, buddy. And right?
Yeah. So just to kind of bring it back to everybody, I get asked a lot, what do you mean enforced? Right? That sounds really, bad, right? Someone standing behind you with a ball bat going, you better do this. That's not what we're talking about.
Right.
But maybe Dawn, she might do that.
I might do it.
But so what we're saying is this is like an audit, right? Here are my controls. Can you show me how you're meeting those controls, right? Mm-hmm. The process underneath it. And that's what we really mean by enforcing those policies. So for a very simple example, and I probably use this too often, but let's say we change our password policy to say, I want it to be 10 characters long and complex, right? So I got some rules around passwords. Can you prove to yourself that that is actually what's happening? Can Wes enter a 4-character password, for example? So that's right. What we mean by being able to enforce it. How do you know that it's actually happening?
And we probably don't know how to do that, if I was to guess, as accounting professionals. That's not our wheelhouse. So let's play in our wheelhouse, right? So thinking about all of that, okay, a deep dive into responding to those new security needs. What are we going to do? Security is not a set it and forget it. Because there are some applications that are set it and forget it. There are some procedures that we put into place that seem to be set it and forget it. But when it comes to new security, things are changing I would say almost every day. But at the end of the day, hackers the thing is, hackers can be in your system for more than 200 days before you even know it. The ship has sailed. The game is over. Go find a job somewhere else because your firm it's all done. And I'm not, I'm always that, and don't scare. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to prepare you, but I might be trying to scare you if that's what it takes to get us as practitioners to pay attention to this. Again, like I told you in the beginning, I'm the designated motivator for accounting professionals, but I also will not tell you something that you should be doing something if I'm not actively working on, either if I have already completed or I'm in the journey and I'm making the changes because I know it's important. I will never tell you to do something I'm not willing to do. That's one of the key things I always like to tell people. So if you think about 200 days that somebody may be in your system, learning how to circumvent or take down your defenses. And so, which I think, obviously Wes can speak a little bit more to that, but we're gonna walk you through those 6 things that we need to be, the Security 6 plan that we all need as we move forward here. So your game plan to do this, implement the IRS 4557 Security 6 plan that we all need. So we're gonna get to it. And at the end of the day, we need to be diving deep to evaluate and evolve our security plan to meet the ever increasing needs. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're particularly vulnerable, we are, because we have data that people want. It's not like just some other company, like maybe a plumber or something like that. They're not as attractive. We are hot. Let's put it, how about that, Wes? Like, we are sexy to these people because we have what they want, and what it is data. And so sometimes we think about focusing on the software we're using, but really protecting our devices and getting that much further is better. Go ahead, Wes. I know you had something to say.
It's not just that you guys manage and have access to the data that they want. They also know and understand SMBs, small businesses, right? They don't have the budget typically, or the technology, or the thought about what they have to do to keep the bad guys out. Right. So it becomes easy pickings is what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So that's why we're starting to see, we saw this exact same thing in the 4557 publication. We saw very similar things back in 2014 and 15 with the SEC, starting to recognize that the public is at risk from their vendors, the people they depend on with their financial information. So it's really important that we do that. I do want to mention these 6 things that we're going to go through, they are pretty high level. I want to mention that 4557, while it seems fairly straightforward until you really start getting into it. And then you realize it starts mentioning things like the NIST framework, right? It's really big. So there's a lot of things in here that we're going to touch on. We don't have time to go through all of this today, so we're going to touch on these 6 things, but I'm also going to try to point out some of the more detailed things underneath it as we go through it.
Yes, okay? Absolutely. Yep. So we're going to move on to these Security 6 requirements, and we're going to talk about your Security 6 toolkit, right? So the SwissNet SwissStack that we call it, going to meet all of your digital safeguard requirements. And that's what we're going to talk about here. The antivirus protection, firewalls, 2FA, two-factor authentication, backups, drive encryption, VPN. And so and again, that's what SwissNet has offered for Powerful Accounting, and it's been phenomenal. And I just feel safe. Like, someone make me feel safe about security, because it isn't something that I'm 100% familiar with. So, SwissNet having experience in the accounting space, which is interesting because SwissNet originally, I'll say came from, for lack of a better word, is it came from more of the banking side of things, right, Wes?
Yeah, well, SwissNet always started out in the accounting space, right? Always. Bringing Right Size Solutions, which is the company I started, came out of the wealth management space. So combining those 2 powerhouses has been extremely helpful. The wealth management space started down this journey of cybersecurity a little early. 2015 is when they really started. So I've I've been, I'm old enough now. I got all that gray hair. I get to see that journey starting to happen with accounting that we've already seen in the financial world, financial service world.
Yep. So the first one, Security 6 requirement number 1, here we are. And of course, Wes is going to get real deep onto this because this is where he nerds out, and I love it. But obviously, antivirus software. Now I understand that I need to have it. I don't know what it does. I don't know what the right one is or any of those kind of things, because that's not what I study. I study tax, right? I study tax law. But antivirus, what it does, so we all are aware, it prevents viruses and malware, scans computers for malicious software, and obviously regularly complete automatic and manual scans. That's something that we should know antivirus does. And I'm going to let Wes be more intelligent than what I just said.
So Gen 1 antivirus, right? Norton, you mentioned Norton earlier, right? So what happened was that's a look backwards, right? Someone had an attack, they took advantage of some vulnerability in an operating system or some software, and they executed certain things. Well, forensic analysis of that says, okay, I can create a signature of what that kind of virus looks like, okay? And so that's really how antivirus worked. It had this list of signatures, and if it saw something like that, it could prevent it. Not very proactive, right?
Right.
Right. You had to have something bad happen in order to stop it, right? As you go forward. So it was good, but as the hackers and the bad guys got a lot better at this, so had the software had to improve as well. It also meant Gen 1, you had to do these updates regular, right? Every time you turn around, you're having to do another update, another reboot of your computer. You had to run manual scans, automatic scans, all kinds of scans that you didn't even know what it meant. You just know it took a long time, right?
Yep.
So if we go ahead and flip,
we'll talk about what Swissnet does. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, next gen, right? So new technology, new investment in the tech world has led to some great technology. It's also not terribly cheap, right? Like everything else. I don't know about you, but my bacon package just cost me $10, right? So it's the better the technology, right, and the new advancements, it does cost some money, and Swissnet has made a huge investment in new technology and capabilities. So what is next gen antivirus? What it really means and what it really comes down to is we now learned through artificial intelligence, AI, that all of these attacks have to be set up, right? I wonder, I wish I could see the audience. How many of you think if I just click on the wrong link, bam, I'm dead, I'm in trouble? It's really not the case. If you are well protected and you have the right technology, clicking on the wrong link doesn't necessarily mean we're going to stop exactly right then and there the bad guys from getting in. What the new technology does is once a bad hacker is in, they actually have to execute certain things to actually take advantage and take over your system and start learning things. There are patterns to this. And that's what the artificial intelligence gives us. It's recognizing patterns, not just signatures. And the bigger the companies, people, SentinelOne, CrowdStrike, all these large companies that have vision from billions of computers and attacks from around the world have been able to use those patterns to very quickly and understand when an attack is actually about to happen. So regardless of any signature, it is a matter that they can predict, hey, this looks like bad activity, we're going to shut it down.
Right.
And that's really what the next generation is all about.
And so we're having a proactive approach.
Absolutely. You're still having to understand what those patterns are and be able to see those patterns, but that is much better, right, than going, well, something really bad happened and this is exactly what it was.
Right.
Now we're able to look at what you normally do on your computer and compare that to what is about going on right this second. So it's that difference that goes, hey, something's not right here. And
right.
being able to, eyes on glass simply means that, you know, you need people combined with the technology. So it isn't just about, hey, I can go buy this technology and feel good about it. You still got to have a little human brain in there to look at it, understand false positives, understand what needs to be done, and help with those notifications and questions all at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's really what needs to be done, not only on hosted servers, but also on, you know, your end devices, right?
Exactly. Well, and I think that's funny that you say that, because for me, I look at it, I'm like, okay, I'm all set. I've got a hosting platform, and so all my stuff lives on the hosting platform, and I'm covered. That is what most people, I think, in our industry are like. Oh, I'm hosted, I'm covered, I'm good. And we don't think of that local device scenario, and of course, bring your own devices and all those things make it even worse. But I think that was something I think a lot of us took for granted and said, oh, we have a hosting solution, so I'm good. I don't need anything more. Well, first of all, you're not even at the WISP level yet. You're just assuming that. And then you're making assumptions that the hosting solution is doing things for you that they're not doing. And we talked a little bit about that. And so.
Yeah, we don't go into too much of the vendor due diligence, but it is a part of this. And so what Don is really talking about is being able to understand who your vendors are. So whether it's, you know, ShareFile or Swissnet or whoever it may be, you need to understand what their technologies are and how they are protecting things. And that's how you're able to assess your risk by using that vendor or that technology that's out there.
So we didn't bake this into this presentation, but I want to ask you a question about that, because it's, and we don't have to answer it today if we don't have the answer, but think about that one point. I'm a tech stack girl. I'm a technology girl. I want my business to run when I'm sleeping. I want things to be happening. I want it all syncing and everybody's good. So we don't necessarily go, all right, well, I'm going to set up SmartVault. Let's use them for an example. I'm going to set up SmartVault. I got SmartVault. I've never asked them, what are that's my permanent document storage, man. That's like my life is in there. Every wills, you name it, are in there. What are their procedures? And then how do I even know that they're telling me something that is even good? Like I say, okay, tell me about your security. And they go, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh, they're covered. We're cool. Like, what do we do?
So there's a couple of standards out there that you can hold your vendors to. You can send a questionnaire, and there's lots of them out there that you can use as an example to go to your vendors and say, you know, look, are you doing these things? Explain to me why you're doing that and what that really means. If you're just trying to check a box, you know, they're going to answer some questions, and like Don said, you're going to hear want, sounds okay, I'm good, right? Vendors like Swissnet, what you really want is a third-party audit of what they say they're doing. Are they really doing it? One of those audits is a SOC 2 Type 2 audit, right? So that's a standard measurement across all companies and technologies, specifically around technology and our security. What are we doing? So for example, we have 92 or 96 actual controls that have been audited by a national CPA firm that specializes in SOC 2 Type 2, and then produces a report that says, you know, how are we doing against those controls? Are we really doing what we said we were going to do? Do we really have all these things in place? That is the kind of report you want to be able to look at. Additionally, there's components in that standard report that say, Don, this is what you need to be doing to make sure our controls work.
Right.
Right. So that's the user side of it. So being able to understand that from your vendors is really important, your tech stack. So that'll help you with your risk assessment, right? So if you're using the local, 19-year-old kid in the backyard, neighbor, whatever, doing your IT, maybe they're really good at it, but can she provide that same level of understanding about vendor due diligence and risk management with that vendor?
That's a great point. And for my guy, my local guy, so when I need him to go do whatever Swissnet tells me to do with the computer, I bring it to him. He's got certificates on his wall. I look to make sure they're updated. I know he goes down to DC and does a lot of work down in DC to update make sure his certifications are updated and things like that. That's another great question to think about. You've got a local professional computer person, ask them if they've got credentials and that they're doing their CPE, if you will, and that they're keeping up. So I don't want to belabor, but I just think those are really great points that I think people get a lot in these webinars, get a lot out of that. So now we're going to move on to Security 6 requirement number 2, which is going to be around firewalls. So firewalls, preventing those malicious software from accessing your computer, and those kind of things. So thinking about firewalls, Wes, tell us what's the deal on that.
So a firewall can be software, it can be physical. Mostly in our offices, we would have a physical firewall behind that little black box that you get, from your internet provider, right?
Yep.
Cox cable or whatever it might be. While those in essence are routers and have some minor firewall capabilities in there, a firewall, typically you want that security package in it. Content filtering, right? GeoIP, meaning that, hey, if something's coming out of Saudi Arabia or China or some other place, Ukraine or Russia, that maybe you're uncomfortable with, you can block that traffic through that firewall. And so it also has capabilities like antivirus and looking for bad things that come through it. A firewall by itself is like level 1 protection. If you don't have that, it's kind of like leaving your garage door open all night. Right? Something's probably going to go missing out of your garage. Bottom line is, if you have an office, if you're set up and you're managing it, you should have a firewall. Now I realize I shouldn't say nobody. Most people are not going to go as far as I have, but I even have separate internet connections for my home office versus the rest of my home.
Yep.
Just because I work out of my house. So I treat it just like an office. Can get expensive, and I understand it goes back to risk management, but that firewall is really important. I also want to point out, firewalls are not going to protect you against things like phishing scams or someone getting into your computer. They're already behind it. Most hacks today, unlike early hacks, they're not hacking through the firewall. It's easier to hack you through social engineering. But that firewall is really important to have.
Wes, you're so smart. It's so fun. So of course we want to look at, well, how can we solve for that? And Swissnet provides or manages. So think about it, because they're not in Connecticut. Let's put it to you that way. So that's fine. But provide or manage the on-premises firewall for offices, and that's important, and that's something that you guys are providing for people.
Yeah, we have capabilities to manage all the remote network equipment, bring it in, understand what those logs are doing. That'll be another thing eventually that CPAs are required. You're going to have to do log management at some point. But the bottom line is we're looking for anomalies in data and understanding how that may or may not be abnormal. Right. And the reason that's important, Don, one of the things about ransomware, everyone understands what ransomware is, right? They've locked up your data, and they're going to hold you and ransom to unlock that data, right?
Yep.
No, that's just part of it.
Yes. No.
Yes. No. I don't know. No. But the other half of that, right, is that they're threatening to expose that data. That's the risk, right? If they expose that data, then your clients are at risk.
Good point.
So why wouldn't you just say, well, I'm just going to restore backup and tell you all to go pound salt? The problem is they've exfiltrated that data. It's no longer in your system, so they have it. So having firewalls, being able to manage it, understanding that flow of data is unusual, that it's copying data outside of your environment. So being able to have those kind of capabilities is important. And depending upon your size and what you're doing and what that risk might look like to you, you may need that level of service as well.
Yep, absolutely. And so moving on to security 6 requirement, this is the one that bothers everybody. Two-factor authentication, Wes. We don't want to do it, just so you know.
Well, let's just be like Nike and just do it.
Just do it. So about 2FA, we can call it, two-factor authentication, however you want to say it. It is an additional layer on top of your password. It's so funny because last night I was working with my daughter. She's doing all my social media, and I had to add her to a certain account, and she has to do 2FA. She's like, oh, do I have to do this every time? I'm like, yes, you have to do it every time. You're not going to be an exception because it's a layer of protection, right? You get a text code, which, by the way, for those of you who may be listening or you talk to the vendors out there, it's important how that text comes through, by the way, because I just want to note this. My phone's sideways, so when I get a text with a code, if the beginning of the code, what you're saying to me is, this is a text code from so-and-so, I have to actually press the text in order to read the code. I'm annoyed by that. So just put the code first and then your explanation after. That's Dawn Berlin's advice. But just the same, it is there to protect us, Wes. We have to have it, right? I mean, this one's easy.
Well, it is easy. It's not 100%. Don't think that if I turn on multi-factor authentication to literally everything, not only am I inconvenienced and grumpy, but I'm 100% covered. You're not, but it is the front line defense that everybody should have. Absolutely.
Every app you're logging into, you should be having 2FA. And if you're not, be concerned. Is that what you would say, Wes?
Absolutely. Yep. If a vendor doesn't provide it,
right,
think twice.
Think twice, because they're putting you at risk potentially here, likely, highly likely. So enforce it. Here's another thing. Swissnet enforces multi-factor authentication for applications. That's, like you said, that additional authentication layer that's going to protect us. It's going to help us take those steps that, by the way, are required, that we need to be taking it because this is security requirement number 3. So we know we have to have it. Right. So
yeah, I want to point out, don't forget, multi-factor authentication also means fingerprint ID on your phones, right? Your little PIN codes, face recognition, those are multi-factor authentications. And so don't just stop and think about multi-factor authentication to your applications. It's devices as well.
Absolutely. I've always, since I was a kid, like I want to open stuff up with my eyes. I want to just, go to my computer, open my, it'll be like this, like when you go to when you go to Clear at the airport, man, like they check your eyes and you don't even have to bust your license out anymore.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
It's insane. It's so cool. So moving on to security requirement number 6, we're going to talk about backup software. And I think we kind of giggled a little bit on this one a little bit earlier with the tapes, which are funny. And boy, it's a really good point. People doing tapes, they never check to see if there's anything stinking on them. I'm like, who does that? But thinking about, of course, backing up onto an external source every once in a while on a regular basis, have a policy and a procedure. This is when I'm going to do it. This is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to have, either external or in the cloud. You can always back up to the cloud if that's your preference. That's fine. And make sure the files are encrypted. And so that, I would love for you to touch on that one point right there, especially Wes. What do you mean by that? How do you encrypt it?
Well, most backup software does it automatically today, right? But when you put a PIN code on your iPhone, it encrypts the iPhone, right? So there's a code to it. It's simple encryption. It's the same technology ransomware would use, for example, right? You're just simply encrypting the data before it leaves your desktop or server or wherever it is. So for example, if you're going to back up something to a third party in the cloud, that third-party provider should, when they read a file, it should be encrypted first, transmitted as an encrypted file, and stored as an encrypted file. And please make sure that the party you're using does not have the encryption key. In other words, they can't open it. So what that means is if the backup provider gets hacked, the data is worthless. It's already encrypted.
Yes, absolutely makes sense. And I think that that's something we definitely are not thinking of at front of mind, I'll say. And so with SwissNet, what's great is hosted applications, data in geographical diverse data centers, SharePoints and things like that. That is super important.
Yeah, the diversity is the key word, Don. I want to make sure everyone understands that, right? One backup, one place is good. Same backup in multiple places, better.
Thumbs up for that. Think about the hurricane that is now hitting Florida again, on the east side this time. Yep. Floods happening, fires happening. I mean, just things that you can't control. There's just no excuse for it. There's plenty of opportunity to do that. So we're going to move on to polling question number 2. I know, I'm sorry, we've gone 46 minutes. We haven't even gotten to all the polling questions, but today we do. When was the last time you backed up your files and system in the cloud? And so your answers, of course, are today, or maybe after this webinar. Maybe that should have been one of the answers there, Wes. So not sure. A few weeks ago, I have no idea where to start with backups. I know I need this help. This is overwhelming. So in the effort of time, Wes, why don't you give us just a couple of examples of what is a good practice? Like, where would be the best practice to do something like that? Back it up.
So if you're doing it as an individual, not somebody like SwissNet, things like Datto, iBackup, those are all good solutions. You can also do it on local USB drives, but remember, if you leave the USB drive plugged into your PC, if you're hacked, they're going to encrypt your backup so you can't get to them either.
So tip, unplug, eject it, or like it's the eject button, if you will, that's in your lower right corner. Do the thing and eject it. So okay, so that's the end of that polling question. We're going to move on because we've got a couple more of these requirements. So we're going to talk about drive encryption, and we've been talking a little bit about this, making sure that data is transformed to unreadable files that you were talking about. So unauthorized people will be deterred. And deterred is a big word there, and then that removable media. So go ahead, Wes, and just give them I know we've talked a little bit about this already, but.
So drive encryption is mainly, we use it in our data centers, of course, but drive encryption that we're talking about here is for your mobile devices, your laptops, your PCs at home. Here's why. I can steal your laptop, and if that drive is not encrypted, I have access to everything on it. Literally everything on it. So that's why you want to really encrypt that drive, right? And it's easy, and it's not hard to do, right?
Okay. And that's what's important. I mean, at the end of the day, again, if you're not understanding it, right? Static data, we're talking about static data. And data that's transmitted, both of those, whether it's just living on your computer or it's being transmitted in whatever way, the encryption's key. And SwissNet, what they do is, again, like we've mentioned before, enforcement. How do you enforce it? Do you have time to enforce it? I know I don't, right?
Well, so that's where policies come into play. So for example, policies we put in place for our clients basically say, if your device doesn't meet your written security information policy per se, you're not going to be able to use that device to get your email and log on to SharePoint and do all the things you're supposed to do. It has to meet the compliance requirements. So that's what we mean by enforcing it, right? If you're not going to keep it up to date, it's not going to be encrypted. You're not meeting the things you said you were going to do. You just can't use that device.
Exactly. And this is a great polling question. This next polling question is a great one. Have you tested your WISP? So I would say, even to take it a step further, if you don't have one, you have to answer no, because you can't test it if you don't have it. Right. So,
while you guys are answering that, I would like to mention desktop exercises are really important to do. So basically what that what that is, and we've done it a couple of times here, we do it a couple of times a year, you take your policy, you take all your controls that you have in place, and then you take something in the news where you've read about someone being hacked and pretend like that happened to your company.
Interesting.
And it's almost like a game, right? But it gets serious quickly, and that's where you're able to test and really understand without getting into too much trouble. Am I at risk or am I not at risk?
Wow, so true. That's a great way to test it. Wow. I never even imagined that would be a thing. So wow, that's awesome. Great stuff. And then of course, so this is the sixth one. Here we are, VPN, right? Virtual private network. Remote, we now have this remote workers. We've got this now we've got different requirements, we need different things now. We need to have a way for everyone to work in the same environment, if you will. That's what I like to call it in the network. So a more secure connection. I loved what you talked about with the internet, and making sure that the internet is safe for them to be using at home, the company network, and is there a firewall on that internet, which becomes a whole nother problem. But VPN, right?
Yeah.
Merits of a public VPN.
There are none. So if you switch over to the next slide.
Yeah.
So this is I get into this discussion a lot. A VPN, everyone knows what that means, right? It's a virtual private network. Think about a hose in the middle of the internet, and the water running through that hose is your data. Okay, that's how it's protected, right? From one point to another. So a VPN, if we set up a VPN from your hosted environment, let's say your hosted QuickBooks environment, to your office, perfect, right? It's completely encrypted, it's hidden, it's tunneling through the internet in a very secure way. Mobile VPNs. There's a lot of people that are advertising for public VPNs. I am not a fan of them, okay? Like Nord. I am not a fan of that. And it's because it's public. So basically what happens is all your traffic goes from your device to their environment, and from there, it bounces out to wherever it wants to go. Well, it's that third party that you haven't validated or trusted or done due diligence on to know that they're not looking at that traffic that's already coming across. If they get hacked, you could be exposed. So I don't like those public VPNs. So what do you do? Don, you're in the airport. What do I do? I've got my laptop. What happens? Use your hotspot.
Yep.
Right? That's the best tip I can give you. Use your hotspot, because that is a VPN and it is private and it's going through your account. So
and my device is protected, right?
Yes.
My device, because my device is protected. So I know that I'm secure with, and that's what I do when I go to the airport. I use this thing. I have unlimited minutes. Why wouldn't I? Right? It makes no sense.
Exactly. Yeah,
so
and it's easy to do, right? You don't have to buy anything else. You already have the capability, so it's already there. It's kind of built in.
Absolutely.
So I would strongly recommend that if you have an office and you're doing something like hosting somewhere, you should have that VPN capability, whether you want to use it or not. But your vendor should be able to talk to you about that and provide it if necessary.
Absolutely. We're going to go into our fourth polling question. While we do, Wes, there is a question that I would, oops, let me go back. All right, one more polling question. Would you like some more information on the Security 6 from Swissnet? Yes or no? This is a simple polling question, but David asked a great question. So thinking about services like Microsoft SharePoint, how do companies like, let's just say Microsoft SharePoint do with encryption? Are there some that are better? Are there some that are worse? Like, it's a great question.
Great question. So, there's two biggies out there in terms of SharePoint, integrated email and what have you, which is Google and Microsoft. There's others like ShareFile, which does a great job, but Microsoft, we like Microsoft because it has that integrated security model. You sign on once. It's the same security model for SharePoint as it is email and calendaring. So if I want to share my calendar with Don, right? Or a SharePoint link or whatever, it's all within the same security model, right? And it's much easier to manage and know who has access to what.
Great.
Whereas if you go to ShareFile, they have a great security model and a great environment, but it's not integrated with everything else. It's separate.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, that's super helpful. Great question, David. Thank you for asking that. So now we're going to wrap up with just a little bit of thinking about things for you, evaluating your current technology, evaluating where you're at. Think about that SWISNet Security 6 toolkit. Help get those tools in place. Create your test, create your plan, and test the plan that all PTIN holders need to have, FYI. Okay, so satisfying those requirements is super, super important. And so the way I look at it, it's go time. Like we come to webinars, we learn this information, and it's great. But I'm telling you, please take the steps now. Now is a great time before the busy season to get yourself in compliance for maybe the first time ever. And you listen, it's totally cool. Like, we only know what we know. That's why we wanted to have this webinar, to teach you guys, like, what I'm learning as I'm going through my journey is to have this plan. Test the plan and implement those tools and the technology that Wes has gone through to make sure that you are in compliance. And that's what we're mostly afraid of. And so one of the things we're doing an industry survey. So this, you can copy paste this or however. We're inviting you to participate. Everybody who registers, we're going to do a drawing for a $100 Amazon gift card. Probably take you 3 minutes, 4 minutes for potential to win it. But just trying to get some feel for what is actually happening out there with all of us with regards to security and how we can take those steps and those measures. And so with this, I just want to say, Wes, I don't see any questions. I think we've answered obviously only one that came in, but I want to definitely next steps. Mandy Sullivan, so it's msullivan@swisnet.com. Mandy is phenomenal. You'll see her if you're at conferences. She's awesome. She's informed. She's passionate. She responds. She's awesome. So reach out to Mandy, or certainly if you said yes, we'll have somebody from Swisnet will reach out to you, probably Mandy, to assess exactly what you're doing, which, by the way, reassessing your cybersecurity is crucial for protecting your practice and your clients. And with that, Wes, before we close this down, are there any last minute thoughts you had for the audience?
A couple of quick ones. One, I posted 2 quick links in the chat for everybody. Hopefully everyone sees those. You probably have seen them before, but the ultimate NIST cybersecurity framework, if you're really curious about what 4557 is based on, look at that link, okay?
Awesome.
And that will really help you. If you haven't seen the publication link, you should go there. There's a lot of really good information and detailed stuff in there. And if you don't do anything else today, turn on multi-factor authentication.
Look at that. There's your takeaway. Do something. That's my whole thing. You come and you learn this stuff and you're like, oh, that's really informative. I've learned so much. And then you just go back to the same practice and you go log into something without 2FA. So let's just implement that. That would be a great step to move forward. But I encourage you, if you don't have a WISP, if you don't have a written plan, if you don't have device protection, just talk to Swisnet, talk to them about it, get yourself into a place of protection and being proactive opposed to reactive when it's too late. They can't help you after the fact, but they can help you before. So let's just be proactive with that. And with that, Wes, thank you so much for this webinar. It's been awesome. I always learn when I talk to you, and you're so darn smart. But thank you, everybody, for coming, and we'll see you again next time. Visit us at swisnet.com or dawnbrolin.com, and let us keep helping you in your journey as you move forward with security. So thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.